Tune in to Q Rock Radio, Sunday morning at 8. Marshall Biddle bringing real estate and legal advice. He's got the knowledge, he's got the insight. You won't want to miss his show. Come on, let's ignite. Real Marshall, oh, he's the expert, no doubt. Navigating the tricky world, he'll show you the route. Whether it's contracts or property sales, Marshall Biddle's got the answers, he never fails. Never fails. Tune in to Q Rock Radio every Sunday at 8. Get your real estate and legal advice, don't be late. Marshall Biddle's here, he'll guide you through the maze. Law and Law with Marshall Biddle, it's a days. Days are days.
It's that time again. I'm saddled up. You ready to ride?
Yes, sir.
I'm Jack Murphy. He's not. It's the real Marshall Biddle.
Yeah, here I am, alive and well.
Yes, you are.
Got my chaps on. Yeehaw!
Settle down, hombre. Settle down. So, the last time we were here, we got into kind of estate planning, and we ran out of time.
Yes, we did.
So, we're going to devote pretty much the entire show. We'll go back and recap some of the stuff when we were last together, and then we'll bring up some new stuff.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
So, you can help folks with estate planning
Yes.
at any age.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I think that if you are married and you and your wife own property, own cars, may or may not have children, you certainly at that point in time need to be thinking about a will. Something happens to your spouse, everything, goes to your spouse, or goes to you, vice versa. And then if you've got children, who's going to be in charge of the children? You need to start thinking of those things when you get to that stage. Early adults, or if you are a single person who has, significant assets, or, in this day, reasonable assets. I mean, if you're, let's say you're 22 or 23 or 24 and you've got a place that you own, or you have your car and you either own a business or something like that, you certainly ought to, have some estate planning documents, and have somebody that either is your designated PR or personal representative, or healthcare agent or those kind of things, just in case something comes along. For the most part, it's couples, and couples with children, and then, of course, older folks as they get down the road, thinking about what the end of life looks like for them. I know, right? People don't want to think about it or talk about it, but the thing I always tell them is it's better to just get it done. We'll spend some time, we'll answer some questions, we'll talk about it, and then you don't have to worry about it because you know it's taken care of. Because when you pass away, the one person that doesn't have to worry about it is you.
Sure.
You don't have to worry about it. It's done. There's nothing you can do that will change any of that. And at that point, that's why you come see us, and hopefully we can, get you in the right spot so things work out a lot smoother than if you didn't have those documents in place. And it's better to be prepared than not be prepared.
How fast is the process of a coroner or a medical examiner signing off and issuing a death certificate? Is that a pretty fast process? Or?
I think it depends on the circumstances surrounding the death.
Okay.
I mean, generally, if you die at home, somebody's got to come and designate whether it's the coroner or the medical examiner. If you die in the hospital, it's fairly quick, not an issue. But the funeral home will certainly get that done. But if you die at home, there's a procedure. It takes a little bit longer, but it's not. It might be a day or so, but it's not weeks for sure.
Yeah, my father passed in 2018. He passed away in the hospital, and it seemed like it was within a week. I could be wrong. It was pretty fast.
Yeah. Yeah, it's fairly quick.
So we had multiple copies of that, and we shared it with some folks. And
get your death certificate. Yeah, the funeral homes do most of that now.
Right, yeah.
And it's fairly simple. I mean, that's kind of your ticket to to, getting your estate opened and planned and going there. And of course, the reason to do the documents is so that you have a say in how your assets are transferred after your death. If you don't have a will, the state is going to determine that, and it's already set in law. You can look at it, it's in the probate code. If you don't have a will, then they're going to say this is who's entitled to portions of your estate. So a lot of people want to have a say in it as opposed to what the government says. But at the end of the day, for the most part, it's going to go to the right people anyway, even if you don't have a will. But sometimes things can be difficult. Let's say that you're a young couple and you have 2 small children and you don't have wills. You own a house, you own 2 cars, and so you pass away, not without a will. Well, your house is now owned half by your spouse and half by your children. Okay, your children are minors who can't sign away their interest in the house. So if you needed to sell the house, then you have to go to probate court and get a conservatorship or a guardianship for those children, hire an attorney for them, and have a guardian ad litem who is a third-party person to look at whether that's in the children's best interest. And it may not be in the children's best interest for them to sell their interest in the house. And that just starts creating all kinds of crazy things. If you have to mortgage the property, which if you're young and you probably already have a mortgage, it's a mess. And I'm not saying it can't be done, because it can be done. Reasonable is always something that can work out, but it's expensive because lawyers are involved, more lawyers are involved, guardian ad litems are involved. It's a lot.
What if the children are grown? Or maybe they're from another mother. Maybe their mom passed away and then dad has remarried, and sometimes kids don't like stepmom.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, but if they're married, stepmom's entitled, and if he doesn't have a will, then it's going to go half to spouse and half to his children that are by blood. Now, if you adopt somebody, it's the same as in the eye of the law as if they are your blood relative. So, so that can happen as well. But it's, there's a lot of tricky nuances in how that works.
I don't know why you were talking about that, and I thought about Anna Nicole Smith.
Yes.
And there was an obvious tie to Myrtle Beach with that whole tragedy.
That's correct. Yeah. She claimed she owned that house in the Bahamas, and she did not own that house in the Bahamas. She was just staying in the house in the Bahamas. But see, everything she owned now belongs to her child, and the child's father's the guardian for them. So that's for her, if you will. I don't know. She might be an adult by now. I don't know. Maybe not.
That's been a while, strangely enough, yeah.
Yeah, I guess it has been a minute, so.
I don't know why I was thinking about that.
Yep.
Just the nuances, and that happens. And
well, and then, everything that happened with that falls under Bohemian law, because that's where she died. So you have to deal with those things. And when you get into international stuff,
forget
all
about
bets
it.
are off. Exactly.
Yeah.
You call the State Department, and they're like, I'm sorry, who are you? Best thing to do is call your senator and say, I need help. After you call your lawyer and say, I need help, and then your lawyer will call the senator.
Well, before we get to all that rigmarole, trusts are something that can be put in place and
Yes.
taken advantage of
Yes.
while we're all alive and happy.
Yes. There's a lot of things about trust. Everybody, the trust was the big deal back in the day, where everybody's like, oh, I got to have a trust because I want to do away with probate. I don't want to have to probate anything, and I don't want to have to do any kind of estate and all of that. So they threw everything into a trust. Well, doing an estate, there's a reason to open an estate and let it be closed, because there's a statute of limitations. Of course, we're not going to get into what that is. Most people know what that limitation is. Under an estate limitation, if you don't open an estate and a creditor comes back, they can come back 10 years later, up to 10 years later, and they can open an estate and try to get assets of what was there if an estate's never opened. So you open an estate, get a personal representative appointed, You got 8 months. You advertise. You see the notice
Yeah,
to creditors.
that's usually printed in a
Yep,
paper.
in a
Sometimes
paper,
they're done online.
and that's right. And they do that, and then that runs for 8 months. They have 8 months to make their claims. If they don't make their claims, then they're forever
Now, you don't run
barred.
the ad for 8 months. You
No,
run it
3 times in 3 different weeks in a row.
Mhm.
One time each every other week.
Sure.
And then that becomes the notice. You file it with the court.
Then the clock starts ticking.
That's correct.
The week ending of the third run.
That's correct. And if they don't collect, or if they don't file a claim within that 8 months, then they're barred, and so they can't come back. So what happens is if you close your estate and somebody comes back and says, "Oh my gosh, so and so did such and such to me, I'm going to sue them." Well, the statute of limitations for lawsuits is 3 years for the most part. So if you did an estate in 1 year and it's done and closed, those other 2 years are gone. They can't come back and make claims against the estate or the heirs or anything else associated with it. So there's lots of reasons to do estates, that being just one of them. Now, the trust provisions that end up getting you there, it is beneficial when you're dealing with parents that are elderly. Maybe one parent has passed away and you're trying to deal with getting property out of your parents' name and into your name without having to pay fees to the probate estate at the court and those kind of things. So there's other reasons for that, but for the most part, you can deal with some of that with life estates where they deed the property to the children, reserving a life estate to themselves. And so until they die, they still have the right to be in that house. The children can't do anything with it, or whoever you deed it
Sure.
to.
Is that a difficult process?
No, it's a simple deed at $25 filing fee plus or minus. It's $15 and then copies and that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's fairly reasonable. And what that does is when the parent breathes their last breath, by operation of law, the children own the home, or the spouse owns the home. That's why you'll see a lot of people own the house as joint tenants with right of survivorship.
Yeah.
One passes away, all you have to do to be able to deed it is record a copy of your death certificate, and it shows that, hey, we owned it together, they're passed away, here's the proof of that, and then you can deed it from somebody without having to open an estate and get the estate to be able to sign for the deceased person that owns the house with the spouse. So there's some things that will streamline, because in that time it's awfully hard to deal with those kind of issues.
Sure it is.
And I'll tell you, for the personal representative, for the most part, if it's a child or a spouse, they don't get to, if you're going through the estate process, they don't get to grieve, because there's the business of dealing with the estate. You got to transfer accounts, you got to transfer cars, you got to assign. For the most part, if husband and wife own everything joint, it's fairly simple. But if you start getting into, one parent's gone, this is the surviving parent, and you got like the oldest child, normally is how it works.
Yeah, tell me about it. I was the oldest child. Yeah.
And they're the one that's got to be responsible for gathering all the items, making sure everything's on the list, submitting it to the court, getting approval, whether you're going to sell it, whether you're going to deed it, give it to somebody, or take care of your mother with what's left, and those kind of things. There's a lot of stuff that's out there, and and having not done it before, if you've done it before, you kind of know. And so I do get some of that where, I did this with my father up in so and so, and this is my mother, and but if you've never done it before, it can be a daunting experience.
Sure. And in my experiences, and I've only had to go through this one time, usually the folks that work in probate, if you're there, they're there to help you and get the process. I mean, that's one function of government that does move pretty smooth for the most part, if you've got your ducks in a row.
Yeah, and it's changed here recently. It used to be that the clients would come into the office, we would get the paperwork filled out, the death certificate, the will, and then I would, as an attorney, walk over to the court's office, to the clerk's office there, and sit down with one of the not really a paralegal, but the assistants that will help you do the estate thing. And, we'd take 20 or 30 minutes. They'd get everything done. They would do the appointment. We'd do the advertising stuff, pay them a check. And then I'd leave and go back to the office, and they would already be appointed as the PR, and things would start rolling. Nowadays, it takes somewhere between 6 and 8 weeks to get that done. You have to get an appointment. They're behind. They're backed up. And if you're doing it as an individual, you basically go in and they hand you paperwork and say, you need to come back and have this stuff
That's what we did
together.
Yeah.
And it's a lot. You know?
Yeah.
And if you do it wrong, then you 2 steps forward, 3 steps back. And so to me, it's worth with the time. Like I just picked up a client who I did a will for them here. He passed away, their surviving spouse and children are they're going home. She's going home with her son and his wife who live in Florida. And so we'll get her appointed, and I'll be here to help her get that done. It's worth it for them to not have to be chasing and running
absolutely.
around doing all of those.
If I had to do it
things.
all over again, I would have had had an attorney there right by my side, but there were some variables where I was going to be up there anyway, because I had 45 automobiles to sell.
Oh Lord, yeah, that's interesting.
Good night.
Yeah. Well, you had to get appointed. Once you got done, then you can sign and get it done and make that happen. So,
well, we're going to take a quick little breather because I need one. I need to fill up my coffee cup again, and we'll have more of Real Martial Law right after this.
If you're buying or selling real estate and you need an attorney, contact Marshall Biddle at the Biddle Law Firm. Marshall's been involved in the purchase and sale of real estate for more than 30 years, and his family's been in the real estate development business for more than a century. In addition to being an attorney, Marshall is also a licensed real estate agent here in South Carolina. The Biddle Law Firm is located in historic downtown Conway and online at biddlelawfirm.net.
Howdy, partner. Welcome back to Real Martial Law.
Welcome back. Boy, oh boy, we're halfway through the show.
I know, right? And we're still just scratching the surface.
We got carried away.
Yes, we did.
This coffee is really good, though. Really good.
Wow.
Sorry about that.
Sounds good.
Oh, it is. It's delicious. Well, we're talking about estate planning. You do that in your office, just about anything with real estate or living trust, wills. I mean, everything.
Powers of attorney. Definitely deeds. We do a lot. And part of the estate planning thing, and over the years, you kind of learn things by experiencing things. That's how we all learn, for the most part. And so there's some things that you can address that don't have to be dealt with in your will. Like if you have life insurance policies or pensions and those kind of things, you designate your spouse and or your children. Your spouse is the primary representative, or primary designated beneficiary, and then you've got generally children. If you have both, then the children become the secondary directive for beneficiaries designation. And so what happens is you pass away, your spouse gets it, and it's taken care of, whether it's a pension or life insurance or investment accounts or those kind of things. And so you can bypass a lot of the estate stuff by having beneficiaries designated on life insurance, not health insurance, but life insurance policies, investment accounts, pension accounts, and those kind of things. And that keeps the value of the estate down, which prevents you from paying a lot of fees in association with the estate process through the probate court. And again, the fees, you can look at them. They're on the probate court's website. There's some, but they're not a lot. Like I closed an estate this week, or last week, for it basically had about $65,000 worth of real estate and some personal property and that kind of thing, and the fees were $42.50. So it's not a great number, but when you get to a bigger estate, it ends up growing a little bit, but it's still not extremely expensive. And that'll help you do that. Then of course,
now, do I need to do this? Because I'm thinking I've got some brokerage accounts, which, because of how I structured a business, one brokerage account is pretty much set up as an employee type 401k self-employment deal. Can I set it? Can I call them and say, hey, I need to designate a beneficiary?
Yes, you can.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's for IRAs.
Yep.
Okay.
IRAs, other investment accounts, stock accounts.
I mean, I do that with insurance policies, and for the life of it, you'd think I wouldn't be making this mistake, but I haven't done that with those other accounts.
Well, and like accounts at a bank, you want to designate a payable on death, which you might open an account and not think about doing that. the bank doesn't really, ask who do you want to leave your stuff to, and so it happens. It's not what they normally are reaching out to find out when you go in. I know you start thinking about what you're going to do.
Good night, man.
Yep. So, and then of course there's always one of my big things, and I'm working on a sheet for my clients to prepare to give to either children or their spouse or their, because generally you got one spouse that pays all the bills, gets the bills, pays the bills, does that. Very rarely do you see both spouses doing that. And when the one that does all the bills passes away, you got a spouse who has no idea what's being paid, how it's
that
being
happened to a
paid,
family
where
friend
it's
back
going.
home. Yeah.
And so what do? You're like, oh my God, I have no idea. Wait till the mail comes. Well, it might all come by email. Well, and when you get to email, do you have login and password information? And that's interesting. It could be automatically saved.
I'm going to do it.
Reset.
Just not right now. Yeah, do you get any of that? I'm going to do it, but not just right now.
Right.
And that's the wrong attitude.
Yeah, for sure. So, and again, you got, you may be dealing with the water company, the power company, telephone, your internet cable. Again, there's all of these things are out there. This checklist of, you need to assume for a moment when you're trying to figure out what it is you're providing to those people who are going to be left behind when you pass away. They're going to walk into your house, you're not going to be there, and you're not going to be able to tell them anything. So what would you tell them if they walked into your house and you were deceased? How would you tell them where everything is? In my desk drawer, open the drawer on the left-hand side, there's a key. That goes to the safety deposit box. Safety deposit box is at XYZ Bank. Go see XYZ Bank employee. Here's their phone number and email. Speaking of email, here's my email, here's my password, here's my E-Trade account password, here's my, IRA, Roth, here's all of my accounts, here's my investment agent, because those things you're going to have to gather it from pages of information where maybe you scan your statements when they come in, maybe you shred them and put them in the trash can, maybe you keep file folders for your tax returns.
Oh, good night.
Maybe you don't. But I mean, it's a lot of information that if you don't share with somebody where it is, it could be lost forever.
It's a hot mess.
It is a hot mess. I promise you, it's a hot mess. And a lawyer can help, but they can't fix those problems. Those problems are, those are other problems. We don't know what the passwords are. We can't help you break into computers and those kind of things. So in full disclosure, it's just you got to be prepared that, and I tell couples, even when they come in and do couple wills, assume that you both are killed and you never make it home today. How are your children going to figure out how to do what you need to do?
Yeah.
Where are your wills? Are your wills in a safe deposit box at a bank? Or at the same bank that you bank at? Do you have multiple banks? Most people have multiple banks. Where are your credit cards?
Yeah, I've got multiple. Well, I didn't set out to have them. It just happened.
It does.
It does happen.
It does happen. You run into somebody, hey, why don't you come over and do a little business with us? Okay, I'll do a little business with you. And so you open up an account there, and then your son opens an account, and then he's got a truck, and then he buys a boat, and then, before you know it, you're at Conway National, Carolina First. Well, it's not Carolina First anymore. Was it TD now? And then BB&T is now Truist.
No, Carolina First became South State.
No. Carolina First became TD.
TD, yeah, that's right.
South State became First Federal.
Yeah,
became.
Yeah, and I think they absorbed. Was it People's
Federal.
Federal.
Yeah, People's Federal. Yeah, and then you had.
I can't keep up with it. It has slowed down.
What was the small bank back in the day from here?
Or you had Horry County State Bank. There used to be like the Farmers Bank here, which was
what was it's right there on 28
Coastal Federal.
That's it. Coastal Federal merged, became BB&T, and now BB&T's merged to become Truist.
Yeah, well, they became Crestcom there for a while.
Well, you had Crescent and then Crestcom, and then you ended up with United Bank, and then you got Horry County State Bank, and it is now United Community Bank.
There's a United and a United Community, and it gets confusing for me.
It is very confusing.
Yeah.
So
and then there's a Palmetto First.
Yes. That's the Strom Thurmond Bank, isn't
Is
it?
it? I'm not
I
sure.
think it was.
Yeah,
I'm not
I'm there.
sure if it's still there.
No, it's
yeah, or First Palmetto.
First Palmetto. Yeah,
First Palmetto, yeah.
Sorry.
But again, I like to look at banks when I travel out of town. This is a little side note just for kicks and giggles. So you go into North Carolina, we were in Wilmington, and you look, and of course they have the First Citizens Bank because that was a South Carolina, North Carolina merger. But, you go, we were in Kansas, and I'm looking over there, and it's like, one big bank. I was like, oh, that's a small branch, but I guess it's the one big bank. And, they're nothing like the communities that we deal with. I figure everybody had the same banks here, there, and yon. Little tiny small towns, no, they got them a little tiny bank, and a couple of guys work there. They got all the business. Everybody else does it, and it's 30, 40 miles to go somewhere else to another small bank, and I guess that's rural
in the
America.
90s, it was like every country club had a group of businessmen that had their own bank.
Yeah, savings and loan. Yeah, that was the savings and loan, and then the RTC. Resolution Trust Corporation took all that over.
Yeah.
We had Whitewater in Arkansas with the Clintons.
I could have done without that.
Sorry,
but that's,
it happens. But they must be made of Teflon, right? I think there was some real stuff going on there.
There are a lot. Here's the telltale side of things, and we're getting sidetracked, but it's okay.
Sorry.
We're coming up, pretty much on the end of the show. Is that a lot of the big name banks are closing their branches.
Yes.
It's like 5 or 10, and then the next quarter rolls around and they close like 5 over here in this area.
Yep.
I mean, one was First National Bank in North Carolina, which became NCNB, and then
Yep.
that became Nations
Yep.
Bank, and then Bank of America. And someone asked me the other day, like, I'm with Bank of America. Where can I go? I was like, good.
Yeah, I don't know, but I'd
I'm
run
scratching
from
my
Bank
head.
of Amigo.
I'm scratching my head.
Yeah. It used to be CNS, and then South Carolina National, and then First Union, and, that crowd. And we never had a Wells Fargo here. That was somewhere out in California. I understand.
They bought out First Union, which merged with Wachovia.
That's correct.
I cried when Wachovia
Yeah,
went
South
away.
Carolina National, and wow, it's interesting. You look out at California. There's banks and chains. They're closing down a lot of stuff in California.
Sure.
And
I had a mortgage. Company. I think I made 2 payments and went through 4. my loan was
Servicers.
sold.
Right.
It was crazy. Well, who do I make the check out to?
Right.
It was crazy.
Yeah,
I'm
it
like
is.
going, okay, something's up here, because the people I'm sending the money to, they've disappeared.
Yeah.
Remember the Washington Mutual?
Yep. That was
That
in
one.
WAMU.
Yeah,
that
WAMU. I was a
that an
WAMU
interesting-
customer.
And how about Countrywide?
Yeah.
Countrywide did all the refinances back in the 05, 06, heydays. And, it was, and they were owned by Bank of America. And, it was just.
And
it
a
was
lot of the
lot.
stuff that happened back then has an impact on stuff that's happening today, because
sure.
that paper didn't disappear. It just
it got reassigned
it
to
got
something
reassigned
else.
somewhere else.
Well, mortgage-backed securities was another ball game, and they took that and went in a different direction. There still are mortgage-backed securities, but it wasn't junk mortgages; it was realistic mortgages, and they've got a lot of regulations now that deal with that. But there's a lot going on, and we talked about this before we came on the air today. That there's a lot going on. We're in a recession. People are not talking about it. They're acting like everything's great, but man, the dollar doesn't go as far as it used to.
Right, exactly. Well, here's where I was going with
Okay.
all this. Okay, I know with my retirement brokerage account, but say there's stocks and bonds. Are those divvied up if you don't have a will? I mean, does that go to the surviving spouse and the kids? Like,
Does yeah, everything that you
Good
own,
night. Yeah.
everything that you own that you haven't
call this
designated
man that's sitting in
beneficiaries.
here with me.
Or call a lawyer that you know that does this kind of work. I don't want to be selfish and think I'm the only one that can do this, because I'm not. And I'll tell you for sure. I can help you if you don't have a lawyer. Call me. I'm glad to do it. If you have a lawyer, you've done work with a lawyer, call that lawyer and say, hey, do you do this kind of work? And 99 out of 100 times they'll either say yes or they'll say no, but we have somebody in the office that does that, or they'll send you to somebody. I don't want to be selfish and think you're going to come and see me. I would appreciate it if you did. If you don't have a lawyer that does this kind of work, call me. I'm glad to help you. But if you've got a lawyer, go see that lawyer and see if they can help you. If they can't help you, I'm happy to help you.
What's your phone number? How do they find you?
843-903-1600. BiddleLawFirm.net on the internet. You can check our website. You can send us a message right there. You can call to set up an appointment. We only see clients by appointment. So, and generally we can get you in within, a matter of days. We don't book. We always leave some spots open for folks that call in just to be able to, because you never know when somebody's going to pass away and you need to see a lawyer, not in 6 weeks, but in, next week. So
Yeah.
I try to be available.
All right, my friend. Good seeing you again.
Yes,
Good
sir.
stuff this week. Yeah, Real Martial Law, airing each and every Sunday morning right here on this same Real Martial Law station.
Real Martial Law is a paid program. The views expressed on this show are those of the hosts and guests and do not necessarily reflect the views of the ownership or management of this broadcast station.